Hey guys, today I'll be going through how to create an automatic slideshow, and I'll be using HTML. You can see the basic structure of the slideshow that I'm creating, where I have a wrapper, and then inside that wrapper I have an image that fills up the container that it's in. And then in the CSS I also have the basic styles that I'll be using. Feel free to copy and if it makes it easier to follow through. But most importantly, the JavaScript is what I need to worry about because that's what's going to get the slideshow to function. So first we want to get the actual image sources stored in one array. So I have, just to show you, I have a folder here called images or image, and I have 4 images within that folder. So that's the images that we're going to be using today. Image 1. Secondly, we need to get the ID of the image that we're going to be using. So I'm just going to call this slideshow image. And the ID is right here. And lastly, I want to set a variable that will store the current index. And what we're going to use this index for is incrementing through each of these image sources in this array. I'll explain it more better in the function that I'll create after this. We'll just call this current slide index. And what we're going to set this to is 0 because we're comparing it to this first. We're going to display the first image on load. So we're going to call this function create slideshow. And we want to run this function on when the page loads. And because we want to see the first image when the page first shows up, we can do this by getting the actual image, then getting into that source, and we're not going to manually type an actual link, but what we're going to use is the image sources within this array. So we get that array name, and we also get this current index because that's the value. We're going to use that and store it in this square bracket. And what this does, because it's set to 0, we're going to get the first item within this array. So we're setting the source of this image to the first item, and we can see that when I load up my live server. So here you can see the first image is being displayed. Now what we want to do next is use something called set timeout. And this is one of the ways that you can create a slideshow. You can also use set interval. However, I prefer to use set timeout just because I've used this method in some of my projects. So this is how you use set timeout. We write set timeout function and open it up with some curly braces. Then here we're going to store the amount of milliseconds that it takes before we run the function that is set in this set timeout. So this is milliseconds. So if we wanted to write 2.5 seconds, so after 2.5 seconds we want to run this function, we would write 2,500. Now the code we want to store in this function is we want to increase the index of current slide index so that the next image will show. So how we can do that is ++. So this changes the index from 0 to 1 after 2.5 seconds. Now it's not going to update the image yet because we need to recall this function in order for this image source to update. And then once this image source updates, it's going to run the setTimeout function again, and it's basically a loop where the index gets updated or incremented, and then the source is updated. Now there's one more thing we need to add. What you'll see on the right side of the screen is the first image being shown, the second image, the third, and then the fourth. And then after that, there's going to be an empty image file because we've exceeded the array length. So this image index is calling on a value that does not exist in this array. So how can we prevent this problem from happening? We're going to use a constraint or an if statement that if this current slide index is greater than or equal to the slideshow array dot length, so if it exceeds this length, then what we want to do is reset the slideshow. So how we do this is by resetting the index back to 0. And the reason we put it in this spot is because once we've recalled in this function with the new index, we want to see if that index provides us with any problems or if it exceeds the array.length. And if it does, before even displaying the image source, we want to update it back to 0, and therefore it looks like it's resetting the actual slideshow. So this is the code, as you can see on the right side. It's going through all 4 of the images from start to end and looping back to the start. And that's how you use setTimeout to create a slideshow, an automatic slideshow. So I hope you guys were able to learn something new today, and thanks for watching.